Hi everyone, I'm Matt and welcome back to another Toylytics video where we take a look at the analytical side of toy collecting. In this video in particular, we're going to look at the Mythic Legions Illythia wave of figures and how they sold on the secondary market in the second half of 2023. Let's take a look at what figures were in this wave and when this wave went on sale. So looking at the info here, you can see that it went on sale according to Source Horseman in November of 2020. I believe it continued into early January 2021, and then the figures were shipped to customers in about July or August of 2022. The point of this is that these figures are really no longer available at retail. They may still be available when the horsemen go to shows. You may be able to get some at the horseman table, but in general, you're not able to get these at many retailers out there, although there are still some of them that are available on Big Bad Toy Store and so on, but others have definitely sold out, and it's the secondary market really only for figures like that. Looking at the wave itself, you can see it's a pretty big wave. It includes some additional items such as hands and feet pack and vampire wings. But we also have a couple mounts here. We have Alder the Moose, as well as Phobos, which goes with Illythia herself. So with that, let's take a look at the data from the second half of 2023. So sales overall, we have a pretty good amount of sales here. There's 419 sales out of, if you recall from previous videos where I've discussed the overall sales, that would be about 4,600. So right under 10% of the total sales for individual Mythic Legions figures were from the Illythia wave here. So looking at the figures themselves, you can see that the figures that were sold the most were Valak was sold 56 times, Baron Voligar sold 54 times, and then we have Illythia herself individually sold 45 times, and Varg sold 41 times. And you can see some of the others were sold in the 20s and 30s, and the hands and feet pack, the 2-pack, as well as the wings were not sold, all that often. Looking at the sales by month, you can see that in general there was an overall dip in October. We've seen that on some other waves as well. What's a little bit interesting here is that we had a big run on Baron Voligar 2 in December. Not really sure why so many people wanted him in December of this year, but kind of interesting to see. We'll monitor this in the future as we go into the sales for Q1 of 2024 to see if that sort of trend continues or if that's more of a one-off thing. But as I've said in other videos, this graph maybe isn't the most interesting to look at right now. It'll become more interesting, hopefully, as we collect more data and are able to see if there's any sort of seasonal patterns or any other kinds of trends with how often each of these figures are selling. Let's go into the average price per figure in the wave. Not surprising that the 2-pack of Illythia and Phobos is number one as far as average price, 183.7, although it wasn't sold that often to begin with. Looking at the two figures that make up that pack, Illythia and Phobos, if you add those two together, we get about, 157. So we're looking at 157 versus 183. We have about a $25, $26 premium for the 2-pack. Not surprising. I believe that premium, though, is a little bit higher than what we saw for Illythia, or not Illythia, sorry, Arethyr and Aethon, the other 2-pack that we've looked at that's been released. That premium was only about a $15 premium. This one seems to be a $25 to $26 premium for the 2-pack compared with the figures selling individually. So something to keep an eye on. In between there, we have Alder selling for $85. Not surprising because it's a more expensive figure to begin with since he's a mount. We also have Phobos and selling for $74 individually. Apharius selling for $73.40. Again, on average, he was more expensive as well, since he's the Centaur, if you're not familiar with the names. And then Decebulus, I think that's how you say it, I'm not sure. That is the ogre scale vampire, selling for $70 on average. He's available right now at Big Bad Toy Store for $75, so not surprising that he has a higher average price overall than the individual figures like some of these are, the standard figures that are $50 retail prices. Artemis Silver Cord 2, $66, so much higher than her $50 retail overall. Valak, again, higher as well, 62. Varg is a little bit of a deluxe figure. He's selling for 55 on Big Bad Toy Store, but people have been paying 60 over $60 on average for him. And then Baron Voligar, Lord Bardrick, and Krotos are in that $50 to $60 range. And then we have the hands and feet and the vampire wings. So let's look at the individual sales for each of these figures and see what they look like. So we have Alder the Moose first. And again, he was an average of retail price about $80, I believe, maybe 75, not exactly sure, but somewhere in that range here. And as you can see, it seems like he's kind of dried up as of December, right? So some early December he was selling, a few of them sold a little bit lower, like 63 here, here's a 69. But after that, he was only really selling for 95 plus for new versions. So something to keep an eye on in the future. It seems like the cheaper quote unquote supply of Alder has dried up, and he might be increasing into the future. We'll keep an eye on it as we go into Q1. So if you see an Alder for somewhere around $80 to $90, might not be a bad idea to pick him up while you still can. Afarius, not really the same here. Again, similar average retail price of about $80, I believe, on him. Maybe 75 to 80 for the Centaur. Overall, he was selling really cheap in the summer. Some loose ones were selling for even, look at that, sub $50. But even for new ones, you could get it for around $60. Recently, more recently in the past month and a half or so, he's been selling anywhere between $70 and $90. So not, basically right around retail, maybe a few dollars less, maybe a few dollars more, but generally right around retail. Not sure why he sold for $130 up here, but most of the time, $70 to $90 is what you're looking for him. Artemis Silvercord, right? So she's one where hasn't sold pretty much at all at her retail price. Right? A few of them here. Here was a new one. This was the only one for $49 that sold less than retail. Everything else has been higher, and she's been anywhere between about $55, $54 here, up to $83 at this point, right? So and even recently she's been 65 plus. So she's another one where it seems like the cheaper quote unquote supply of her has has kind of worn out and or dried up. And if you want an Artemis Silvercord 2, probably a good idea to pick one up if you see one for about $65, because it seems like she might be increasing. Baron Voligar, a lot of sales for him. Similar kind of story. Earlier in the summer, he was able to be found for less than $50. Even some new ones here, especially some loose ones as well. But more recently, he's been selling for pretty much over $50 to begin with, and then even anywhere up. Might not go as high as this one. This $96 seems a little high, but really up to about $80. So anywhere from about $55, $60 to $80 is what he's more recently been selling at, although here's a $50 one too. So you might still be able to get him for close to retail, but he might be another one where if you see him for a little bit above retail, maybe 55 or 60, might be time to pull the trigger if you're interested in him. Decebalus, the vampire ogre, again, higher price overall, $75. I just looked him up on Big Bad Toy Store. A lot sold here for about $67.49. A little bit of a discount off of that traditional price, but a few of them did even sell. Here's one for $81. Here's one for $91. So you're looking at somewhere around $65 to $80 or so for him for the most part. He was selling a little bit earlier here for some cheaper prices at 56 here, and here's a 60. But in general, you're looking about 65 to 80 for the most part. All right, hands and feet pack, not too interesting. Just a couple of these were sold. This is the black one, so one for 20 and one really expensive here for 35. So those don't come up all that often. The brown ones, I believe, come up a little more often. So a few more of these were sold. So here's one for 20 to 54. This is 25, 29.99, and 25.98. Right. So in general, somewhere between $20 and $30 for this hands and feet pack, the brown hands and feet pack. Okay. Then we have Illythia individually. Right, so she was a higher price to begin with, a deluxe. I think individually she was 60. So looking at her overall, you can't really get her any time recently, other than this one loose one here for 54. You can't really get her any time recently for anything less than 75, right? So she's pretty much between 75 and all the way up to 120. I'd say maybe around 100, right? So 75 to 100 is what she's looking at if you want Illythia. Looking at the 2-pack here, not a lot of them sold. You could look at this as a trend. I'm not really sure that with this few data points there is a trend here, but one sold way back in July for $215. The other ones have sold more recently for lower prices. Here's some repackaged ones. Kind of strange that people would buy repackaged 2-packs, I guess just for the box. But here was a new one that sold for $163.55, which I think overall is a pretty good price. So if you see one, sort of in that range about 160, I think that's a good price for the 2-pack, because the individual figures are going for around 160 themselves. Here's Krotos. Okay, so don't hear a whole lot about him, and the prices kind of reflect that, right? So here's our $50 standard price for the standard figure. We've got some that are have been lower than that, from around 38 to 50, and then more recently he's been selling for around retail, but maybe a little bit more, so somewhere in that $50 to $60 range. So he's one you can still pick up pretty close to retail. Lord Bardrick, right, is another one. I know if you've watched Bill from Dorklair, that's one of his favorite figures of this wave and even of the whole line. He's kind of been all over the place here, right? So we have some high prices of over $60 back in July and August. We also have some prices that are less than retail price, so less than $50 in September through early December. And then more recently, he's been selling for $60 to about $65. So it seems like the cheaper prices may be over for him. He might be in that $55 to $65 range. If you see him for 55 and are really looking to add him to your collection, it might be a good time to jump on picking up a Lord Bardrick. Here's Phobos individually. We talked about his average around $70. You can see that's that price there, and a lot have been sold for that kind of $67.49, $68 here. Not too many high prices, so he hasn't sold too often for over 100. I would say basically between about 62 up to 92 or 90, but overall you can still get a Phobos generally for the retail price somewhere around $70 to $75 at most. Okay, getting closer to the end here, we have Valak. A lot of sales for Valak, as we said in the first table. Looking here, here's our $50 retail price, and you can see that he has sold a little bit less than that in some instances. Here's a real cheap loose one for $40, but for the most part, he's been selling for higher than $50, and more recently, from around December 11th on, he's been selling for more than $60, right? So in that $60 to $80 range. So again, this might be a situation to keep an eye on in the future, where the cheaper supply of Alex has dried up, and he might be in that $60 to $80 range in the future, and then moving on closer to 100 as we move forward. So thinking if you see one for around 60, might be a good time to pick one up. Vampire Wings. These are, a few of these have sold higher than 30. One sold real cheap here for $11.50, but basically everything has been around $20 to $25 for the white Vampire Wings individually. These are the ones that also came with Varg, I believe. I think they're the same ones, but they are sold or available individually. And here's Varg. Speaking of Varg, we'll finish off with him. Let's ignore this one here that was really high. I'm not really sure why somebody would pay $116 when he's available from Big Bad Toy Store today for $55. But looking at the prices, you can see that people aren't going to Big Bad for some reason, and they're buying him for over $60 for the most part. Other than this new one right here for $46, all the other new Vargs that have been sold in November and December have all been 60 or higher. So we don't know when Big Bad's going to sell out, but as soon as they sell out, it's pretty safe to assume that he's going to be selling for, I would say, like $60 to $80, and probably pushing a little bit higher as availability dries up. So that is it for the Illythia wave. This one's one of the more interesting waves to look at because it's right on that cusp of some figures are available still at retail, many other figures are sold out. So it's kind of interesting to see the prices of the ones that are available versus the ones that have sold out. And these are the more interesting ones to keep an eye on in the future as retail dries up on these figures. So hope you enjoyed this look at the Illythia wave. Please like, subscribe, comment, etc. As everyone else always says. Let me know if you want to see any additional analysis with the data that I have. I'm happy to take considerations there and take suggestions. And hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.